She blocked my dock. During fishing season? Oh no, Karen, now you've hooked the wrong guy. HOA Karen blocked my dock, so I shut down the entire fishing festival. Part 1. The dock, the view, and the declaration of war. I never set out to be the villain in a neighborhood saga. But then again, I never expected the HOA to declare war on a dock older than their entire organization. It all started the day Emma and I bought her late grandfather's lakefront property in Lakeside Shores. There was charm in every weathered beam of that house, every creaky stair, but what truly stole my heart was the dock. 60 years old, built by her grandfather's own hands. Faded initials still carved into the support post like a signature etched in time. I remember standing at the end of it. The lake so still. You could hear the bass leap. And in that moment, I thought, this is it. My place. My peace. My quiet retreat from the chaos of remote IT calls and server crashes. I didn't need yachts or jet skis, just that dock, my fishing pole, and maybe a cold beer on Friday nights. Simple. Sacred. Mine. For Emma, it wasn't just property. It was memory. Summers on that dock with her grandpa, learning how to bait a hook and whistle off-key. For me, it was escape. From screens, from noise, from everything that doesn't matter. We settled in quickly. The neighbors were friendly, at first. Victor Ramirez, a retired vet 3 doors down, brought over a welcome basket. Glad to have year-round folks here, he said with a warm smile. Place gets crazy in the summer, especially during fishing season. Fishing season. That's when I first heard about it. An annual festival, a decades-old tradition. Booths, prizes, live music, a big, loud celebration for the community and the economy. Everyone spoke about it with reverence, like it was a sacred rite, and I was excited to be part of it, maybe even compete. That was until the letter arrived. An official notice from the HOA stamped, formal, cold. Your dock is in violation of HOA regulations. You have 30 days to remove it. I read it twice, then again. I laughed at first. Thought it was some clerical mistake. That dock was older than the HOA itself. It was built in the early 60s. The HOA formed in 1990. I picked up the phone, and that's when I met her. Eleanor Blackwood, HOA president, queen of the clipboard. Her voice was syrupy, but thick with superiority. I understand your concern, Mr. Turner, she said, which meant she absolutely didn't. But all lakefront structures must conform to current architectural standards. Your dock is non-compliant. Since the property changed hands, grandfathering doesn't apply. I pushed back, calmly. Ma'am, this dock predates your covenants by nearly 30 years. It's safe. It's solid. It's historic. She chuckled. Actually chuckled. This isn't constitutional law, Mr. Turner. It's Lakeside Shores. I suggest you read the bylaws. The 30-day clock is ticking. And just like that, the line was drawn. Part 2. The overheard truth and the quiet shift to war. That night, I couldn't shake it. The letter, Eleanor's voice, the smugness baked into every word. I wasn't just angry. I was insulted. This wasn't about safety or regulations. It was about control. I needed air. So I stepped outside, trash bag in hand, mind spinning. And that's when I heard them. Eleanor and a man I didn't recognize, talking just past my property line. I don't care if it's heritage, she said, voice dripping disdain. That dock blocks the view from my living room. Then came the kicker. We need the space for the new fishing pier. The man, Marcus, nodded in agreement. My breath caught. This wasn't about bylaws. It was about her view and her project. She wanted my dock gone, not because it was unsafe, but because it was inconvenient to her summer plans. And that was the moment I stopped playing defense. I didn't slam doors, didn't raise my voice. I went inside, opened my laptop, and started collecting ammo. Every HOA document I could find, downloaded. Property laws, printed and highlighted. Old deeds, requested from county records. I brewed a full pot of coffee, turned off my phone, and began to build my case. Emma watched from the hallway, quiet, worried. But when I told her what I overheard, her eyes turned sharp. Grandpa always said he filed every permit, every detail. He knew how to keep things legal. That sent me down another path, the local archives. Hours passed. Sun came up. And there it was. A permit. Signed. Stamped. Dated. 1962. Long before the HOA ever existed. And even better, I discovered something called riparian rights, the legal right of a landowner to access water directly from their property. It wasn't just a dock. It was a right. And Eleanor? She was about to learn that some battles aren't won with clipboards, but with facts and fury, and a stack of legal documents that scream checkmate. Part 3. The emergency meeting and the fence that sparked a storm. I sent my formal reply to the HOA, along with a scanned copy of the dock permit and a polite refusal to remove anything. Less than 48 hours later, another letter. This time, it wasn't a warning. It was a declaration. Emergency HOA board meeting to address ongoing non-compliance. Translation? Eleanor was assembling her troops. I brought Walter Graham with me, retired attorney, HOA survivor, and my newest ally. His house? Painted navy blue, which Eleanor once tried to outlaw for being aesthetic pollution. He won that fight. And now, he was grinning like it was round 2. The meeting room was packed. Eleanor sat at the head of the table like a dethroned queen, faking her crown still fit. "This meeting is called to order," she began, gavel in hand. "Our first and only item, the Turner dock." I stood calmly, presented the permit, the deed, the riparian law. Some heads nodded, but Eleanor, she didn't flinch. "Regardless of historical paperwork," she said, voice sharp, "the walkway to Mr. Turner's dock crosses HOA common property." She motioned to a map, a narrow 6-foot strip between my yard and the lake. "That is ours. And for safety reasons, we've voted to install a barrier." "Wait, what?" "You're leaving the dock," I said slowly, "but fencing off my path to it?" She smiled. A real, cold, victory smile. "Mr. Turner can keep his dock. He just won't be able to use it." I froze. This wasn't just petty. This was surgical. She had found a legal corner and driven a fence post through it. The vote passed. Only Victor Ramirez abstained, his jaw clenched, eyes unreadable. And as the room began to empty, Eleanor walked by me, leaned in, and whispered, "I told you, you wouldn't win." But what she didn't realize was that she had just made her biggest mistake yet, because now she'd turned this into a war of access, and I was about to shut down access for everyone. Part 4. The fence, the footage, and the plan to end it. All 3 days later, I watched them install it, a 6-foot metal fence, right across the only path to my dock. Cold steel, locked gate, just wide enough to say, "You're not welcome here," without using a single word. Eleanor stood nearby, arms crossed, sunglasses on. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. But as she turned to leave, she muttered, I told you this was pointless. And in that moment, I smiled, because what she didn't know was that I had already filed a formal complaint with the county, not just about the fence, but about abuse of riparian rights and intentional interference with legally protected property access. But I didn't stop there. I started digging deeper into Eleanor. 15 years as HOA president, unopposed, unquestioned, untouchable, until now. Then I found it. Lakeview Construction, the company contracted to build the new fishing pier, the one that needed my dock gone. Guess who owned a financial stake? Eleanor Blackwood. It was all right there, in public records. I wasn't just fighting a fence. I was fighting a scheme. So I reached out to neighbors who'd whispered their frustrations, to residents who'd been fined for lawn chairs, mailbox paint, bird feeders. One by one, they answered. We met at Walter's house, the Navy Blue Rebellion HQ, Sophia Lynn, George Winters, even Isabel Rodriguez, a former HOA board member who'd resigned in protest. She enforces rules based on who she likes, Isabel said. She gave maintenance contracts to her brother-in-law, no bidding, no oversight. I listened. I took notes. And I knew. Eleanor didn't just build a fence. She built a target on her own back. That night, I opened a new folder on my computer, titled it in bold all caps, Operation Fishhook, because if she wanted to cut off my access, I'd cut off hers, not just to my dock, but to her entire fishing festival. And trust me, she'd never see it coming. Part 5. The biologist, the bass, and the trap she never saw while Eleanor was busy fencing me out. I was digging into something deeper, something she couldn't control, something older and far more powerful than any HOA rule, nature, specifically the base. I'd seen them for weeks, hovering near my dock every spring, circling the gravel beds, darting beneath the lilies. And then it clicked. Spawning grounds. So I made a call. To Daniel Ortiz, an aquatic biologist at the local university. I'd found his name in a research paper about freshwater ecosystems. Getting to him wasn't easy. 2 assistants, 3 voicemails, 1 long email explaining what I'd observed. But when he finally called back, his voice was curious, intrigued. "Spotted bass?" he asked. "Consistent behavior? Nesting patterns?" I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Yeah, I see them every year. Same spot, just off the dock." Daniel paused, then said the words that made my heart race. "That could be a protected spawning habitat. I invited him to visit that weekend. He brought gear, waterproof cameras, instruments I couldn't pronounce, and early Saturday morning, we suited up and slipped into the water. The lake was still until we dove beneath. And what we saw? Beds of gravel, carefully arranged, tiny depressions in the lake bed, aquatic plants growing in perfect formation. "This is it," Daniel whispered through his snorkel. "This is textbook spawning behavior." We took photos, samples, temperature readings, and when we climbed back onto the dock, Marcus Reed, Eleanor's right-hand man, was standing there, phone in hand, watching us. "What are you doing?" he barked. Daniel smiled politely. "Scientific survey, critical base habitat assessment." Marcus didn't answer, just scowled and walked off, no doubt speed dialing Eleanor. But by then, it was too late, because now I had proof. And the next call I made was to the Department of Natural Resources. They scheduled a site visit, told me if the spawning ground was confirmed, construction near the area would be prohibited. That meant Eleanor's precious pier, dead in the water. She wanted to cut me off from the lake? Fine, because I was about to cut off her entire fishing festival. Part 6, the notice, the crowd, and the beginning of collapse. 1 week later, it arrived. A white envelope, stamped with the state seal, delivered by certified mail. Inside, a suspension notice issued by the Department of Natural Resources. All construction on the new pier halted indefinitely. Reason? Pending environmental review due to potential disruption of a sensitive aquatic habitat. In other words, the spawning grounds Daniel and I documented, protected now, by state law. I read the letter 3 times, then pinned it to my fridge with a magnet shaped like a trout, and just like that, the tide had shifted. But the real storm came 2 days later. At the emergency community meeting, Eleanor called. The room was packed, standing room only. Whispers, side eyes. Tension so thick, it could crack drywall. Eleanor stood at the front, lips tight, voice crisp. "Mr. Turner," she declared, "has taken it upon himself to sabotage a community tradition. Because of his actions, the fishing festival may be canceled." Gasps, murmurs, eyes turning toward me. It was clever. I'll give her that. She wanted to frame me as the villain, the man who killed a 40-year tradition over some fish eggs and gravel. But before I could respond, another voice cut through the noise. William Foster, DNR Regional Director, and a man who did not appreciate being dragged into HOA theatrics. He stood up, calm, but commanding. "The protection order was not issued because of Mr. Turner," he said. "It was issued because our scientific survey confirmed that this area is a critical spawning site for spotted bass." The room quieted. "If we allowed construction to continue," he continued, "we risked damaging the population permanently, which would have destroyed this festival. For good." Silence. Real silence. Then, Henry, old fisherman, local legend, he stood, his voice raspy but clear. "If we lose those bass," he said, "we don't just lose a weekend party. We lose everything this lake means." A few others nodded, some still unsure. But Eleanor? She stood there, frozen, her usual fire reduced to cold smoke, because for the first time, she wasn't in control. And that was just the beginning. Part 7. The vote, the backlash, and the unraveling of a tyrant. I thought Eleanor would step back, maybe even regroup, but no, she doubled down. 3 days later, I got hit with another letter. Fine increase, $500 a day, citing some obscure clause about actions detrimental to community interest. They even cut off my access to the clubhouse, deactivated my key fob to the gated lots and tennis courts, all for protecting a fish habitat. Emma looked at me, worried. "Maybe it's time to let this go." I shook my head. "Number now's exactly when we dig in." At the next meeting, they tried to bury me. Eleanor stood tall, or tried to, declared me an environmental extremist, said I was manipulating government agencies to settle a personal score. But this time, it didn't work. Because right then, Victor Ramirez, the quiet vet who'd abstained from every vote, stood up. His voice was low, steady, cutting. "Enough, Eleanor. We're losing our festival, the thing we all love most, because you couldn't admit you were wrong." Gasps echoed through the room. Eleanor opened her mouth to respond, but she never got the chance. Harold Schmidt, oldest board member, the one who always sat silent, picked up the mic. "I propose a vote," he said, "of no confidence." The room froze. Eleanor blinked, like someone just flipped off the power in her brain. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "You can't." But she could. And they did. Hands went up, one by one. Victor, Harold, Isabel, even Deborah Collins, the HOA secretary whose pen always trembled under Eleanor's rule. When the count ended, it was clear. Eleanor Blackwood was out, removed as HOA president by her own board in front of her own neighbors. She stormed out, face flushed, clipboard trembling in her hand like a sword too dull to cut anymore, and as the door slammed behind her, I finally exhaled, not because the fight was over, but because, now, it could finally begin again, the right way. Part 8, the lawsuit, the lie, and the last card she'd ever play for a moment. It felt over. The air was lighter. Neighbors were smiling again. Even the koi near my dock seemed to swim more freely. But with Eleanor, peace is just the pause between storms. 1 week later, we got served. A man in a stiff blazer rang my doorbell on a Saturday morning, while Emma and I were still in pajamas. Charles Turner? He held out a thick envelope. I didn't even have to open it to know that she was suing us. The HOA, me, the board, everyone who stood in her way. 27 pages. Alleging sabotage, defamation, tortious interference with her business relationships. She wanted damages, reinstatement as HOA president, and, wait for it, $750,000. Emma stared at the number, then at me. She's lost her mind, she whispered. Number, she's doing what people like her always do. Using fear, weaponizing paper, turning courtrooms into battlegrounds. I took a breath, sat down, and called Walter. He showed up within the hour, battered briefcase in one hand, strong coffee in the other. This, he said, flipping through the documents, is what we call a SLAPP suit. Strategic lawsuit against public participation, a desperate move, a legal scare tactic. It's not meant to win, Walter explained. It's meant to silence. But he wasn't rattled, not even a little. We're going to file for immediate dismissal, and then, he grinned, we countersue for abuse of process. The case was assigned to Judge Catherine Miller, a woman known for two things. 1, her deep respect for environmental law. 2, her absolute hatred of courtroom theatrics. At the hearing, Eleanor's lawyers showed up swinging, painted me as a manipulative newcomer, a tech bro with a vendetta, a man who sabotaged tradition for ego. Then it was our turn. Walter calmly handed the judge photos, timelines, witness statements, the original dock permit, the business ties between Eleanor and the pier contractor, environmental assessments, and the best part, a copy of the DNR's formal report, citing Eleanor's pier as the greatest risk to the spawning grounds. Judge Miller leaned back in her chair, tapped her pen twice on the desk, and said, the court finds no merit in this lawsuit and refers the matter of potential HOA misconduct to the County Ethics Committee. Boom. Just like that. Her last weapon, disarmed. As Eleanor stood there, face frozen, her last supporters quietly slipped away behind her, and in that moment, for the first time, Eleanor Blackwood looked small. Part 9. The festival, the freedom, and the legacy of the dock. It took weeks, but the air in our neighborhood changed. No more mystery fines, no more clipboard patrols, no more HOA tyranny dressed as community values. We held a vote, this time fair, open, and packed. New bylaws, new leadership, new voices finally being heard, without fear. And best of all, the fishing festival was back, but not the way it used to be. No corporate banners, no overpriced food trucks, no pier that cut through protected waters. This one was hosted on my dock. Yep, the very dock Eleanor tried to fence off. We cleaned it, repainted it, hung lanterns from old posts, neighbors brought homemade dishes. Emma set up a lemonade stand with the twins. And Henry, the old fisherman, told stories to wide-eyed kids about bass the size of Labradors. As the sun dipped low behind the lake and the fireflies began to twinkle, I stood at the edge of the dock, line in hand, heart full. Victor walked over, clapped me on the back. "You did more than save the dock," he said. "You saved us." I smiled, eyes on the water, because this wasn't just a win. It was a reminder. That community doesn't come from rules scribbled in HOA manuals. It comes from standing up, together, when someone crosses the line. And as for Eleanor, she moved out 2 months later. Sold the house, quietly. No farewell, no more clipboard, just gone. They say she's living 3 towns over now. No HOA, just a little condo by the freeway. Irony? She's reportedly fighting the next HOA over a patio umbrella. Some people never learn. But us, we'll be right here, fishing, laughing, and never, ever letting someone like her take our peace again.